boilers, what is it? It's connecting multiple boilers together to be utilized to appear as a single heat source. And our boilers, our cascadable boilers, which essentially is our entire series, you can cascade up to 8 with the onboard control. So tonight we'll talk about the 2 different platforms, essentially the FTBN TRX platform, as well as the SOLA platform, which encompasses the FTG, the LX, and the TFT. Why would you do that? Well, you get redundancy, which can save your ass, and a much wider range of load matching. When would you do it? Well, my advice is do it whenever possible. And we'll talk about how proper piping and wiring. You don't have to add any other additional control. It's all built in these days to everything we offer.
Yeah, redundancy is the way to go, especially if you got a breakdown, one unit's down, you got another one to back it up.
That's right. That's right. So we got a couple different ways you can pipe it. You can pipe it using closely spaced tees. And again, so here we have 4 LX series boilers on a common manifold, a common header, supply and return connected to closely spaced tees. Each boiler gets its own pump, and then there's a single system pump in this particular case. And the alternative, again, common header into a hydraulic separator, and then off to the system piping. Again, each boiler gets its own dedicated circulator. Note that condensing boilers like to have the circulator on their return, so you're pumping into them. So why options A and B? Well, because boilers are piped in parallel, and that's important. So individual upstream boilers do not heat downstream boilers. In other words, if you pipe in series, each successive boiler is seeing water that's been warmed by the boiler previous to it. So we never recommend series piping of boilers, always parallel. This allows for the full range of operation for each boiler and maximizes the potential system turn down. A turn down, and I know we've talked about this before, so at the risk of sounding repetitive, it's the ratio between the highest fire setting, the maximum output, and the lowest fire setting, or the minimum output. And that's the sort of full operational range of a boiler, or in this case, boilers. Because turn down is additive. So turn down is, it depends on the boiler. Most boilers these days have at least 5 to 1, and quite often it's as much as 10 or 11 or 12 to 1, and probably at some point we're going to see more than that.
Whew, whew. I know, it's scary.
Yeah, and it gets tricky when you get above sort of 10 or 11% because, or yeah, just because of the burner.
They're already microzoning. They're going to really do it then.
Yeah, yeah. But as I mentioned, turn down is additive. The more boilers you add to the system, you increase the maximum output, but you don't affect the minimum output. So if you cascade, let's say 2 10 to 1 boilers, you get a system turn down of 20 to 1. 3 boilers would make it 30 to 1. So the more boilers are in a system, the higher the turn down ratio. And you know, when would you do that? Well, as I mentioned earlier, I would do it whenever possible. You get much higher seasonal efficiency. Smaller boilers are a lot easier to handle, for sure, to get on the wall or get into a basement. Quite often the parts cost less on smaller boilers than they do on larger commercial ones. And most importantly, I think system redundancy means fewer emergencies that require night and holiday service calls. In other words, because it's very, very rare, statistically, only less than 3% of the heating season do you require the full output of a properly designed system. More often than not, in fact, as much as 70% of the time, you're running at half load or less. And consequently, if you were to lose a boiler in a cascade, the chances are very, very good that the building would not miss that boiler, which means you could then schedule service as opposed to service scheduling you.
Well, and you also figure, when you have multiple boilers, they're cycling the fan, but different boilers are cycling. You're not cycling one boiler and cycling that fan all the time. So you're getting different runtime on each component, which is going to.
Oh, well, yeah, you're cutting the runtime, with 2 boilers, you're cutting the runtime in half. With 3 boilers, you're cutting it by, 60% or more. So yeah, you're reducing the number of run hours on each boiler when you put it into a cascade.
You're just helping the components last longer.
That's a fact. So we're going to talk about basically the 2 different platforms in which we have cascading. First and foremost would be the residential series, the TRX and the FTBN. I picture this. This is actually the installation manual for cascading. It's available at our website. So if you really want to dig into this a little deeper, or if you have an application that you're looking at, we'll cover the high points tonight. But there's a lot more detail certainly in the manual, and it's free to download. So help yourself.
And you know what, that you bring up downloading, it's easier because you guys have to follow each step. So, download, you have it in front of you. I make it bigger now because I need glasses. Just throwing that out there.
Well, I find it's helpful to have the manual for sure. Especially the first couple times you do it. After that, maybe you remember and maybe you don't. You only need a refresher, but definitely the first couple times. So anyway, there's a little trick to this because the smaller TRX and the larger TRX plus the FTBN have their own peculiarity in terms of internal piping. You want to be careful that you're applying the proper piping setup to the boilers that you're using. So in this first diagram, we're looking at what we call the small TRX. That's the 85, the 110C, the 150C, and the 120 heat only. So in this case, we're showing 2 different alternatives. We're showing all 3 boilers heating a common load, and 2 different alternatives for connecting your indirect, if you have one. On the left is an indirect that's being serviced by all 3 boilers, and on the right is an indirect, if you pipe that way, that's only being serviced by the 3rd boiler in that cascade. So depends on the size of your domestic load. If your domestic load is small and your heating load is large, you might do it one way, and if
that would be rare. That would be rare.
Well, it depends. Let's say you've got like I don't know, some kind of warehouse or a facility of some sort.
With some radiant. Yeah, I could see that.
Where you've got the heating load is the whole building, and then maybe you've only got, let's say, a slop sink or a lavatory or something for domestic hot water, a wash station. I can easily see that scenario. So anyway, you have your choice, and there's 2 different ways to do it. Just as I said, we're paying attention to the piping, and we'll get into the wiring and the setup here in just a moment. If you have the larger TRX, that's the 150, the 199, or the 199C, or any of the FTBNs, you want to pipe it this way. It's just slightly different, but enough different that it's important to pay attention to it. And again, you have a choice of connecting your domestic to a single boiler so you peel off one boiler out of the cascade to make domestic when it's needed, or you have the ability to apply the entire cascade to the domestic as well as the heat. And there'll be some settings changes in the setup, but as far as the piping is concerned, that's it right there. So a couple of important things. Wi-Fi is built into these two series of machines. And when you do a cascade, it's important that you disable the Wi-Fi on every one except the master boiler, the lead boiler. So you're just going to pull the connection to the PCB, and then you're going to the one that you don't pull is going to become the Cascade Master, and you're going to go into the technical menu and set parameter 046 to B Master, and you're going to connect the system sensor. It's essential in these cascades that you use a system sensor to the master boiler. You're going to then establish which ones the followers are, again by setting them up in the technical menu. And we've talked at length in other sessions about how to get into that, but you want to get into the installer setup, and that gets you then into the technical menu. And ideally, you put this online, and then it's all very, very easy to see on a tablet or a phone or your computer. And you're going to set those up as followers, B. So each boiler needs to have a unique address in a cascade. And so the master is already unique in that we've told it it's the master, but the various followers are going to get designated BF1, BF2, BF3, up to BF7 if you have 8 boilers in the cascade. And that's important because the master control needs to know which boiler it's sending instructions to. And so, like mail or email or anything, it needs to have a unique address to send that information. You want to disconnect power to all the boilers. You're going to daisy chain to this, if you look up top here, to this bus terminal. That's the orange wiring terminal, and you're just going to go connect in series each boiler in that cascade. You do want to respect polarity when you're wiring it, but other than that, it's just a daisy chain from bus to bus to bus.
And now remember, in that kit that you get for all this, you get a bunch of those connectors. Don't get rid of those orange connectors. You can use them in any one of those terminals.
Yeah, they're handy. They're like a universal.
Yeah, those are universal. Yeah.
Yeah, nope. It bears mentioning because we run into this all the time. But if you look at those plugs, T1, sys, tank, OD, T2, and bus, well, not so much bus, but the other ones, each one is unique to a particular spot. And there are little tabs on the side of those connectors that don't allow them to slide into any slot except the one that they're color coded to. Now, of course, there's always a life hack with everything. If you were to file those little tabs off the side in a pinch, you could get those connectors into a different slot. But in general, if you're not aware of that, it can be very, very frustrating. So they're color coded for a reason because they're meant to go in a particular slot.
Malik says, are they white or not? All orange. They're all orange, Malik. They're all orange.
The ones in the Cascade kit are all orange,
yeah.
Yes.
They're universal.
Yeah, the only one that's white is TT1.
Yep.
So when we get into programming, and again, just to reiterate what we talked about, you make the whatever boiler you designate to be the master, you go into 0.4.6 and set it to be a master. And then subsequently on each boiler in that in the cascade, you will designate them as BFL1 or 2 or 5 or whatever, as long as it's as long as each one's unique. And then there are going to be some other settings here, but these are primarily settings that you would use if you were setting up even a single boiler. You're going to set your domestic water temperature. You're going to tell it what type of boiler it is. You're going to define your temperature range that you want to operate in, whether it's a low temperature system like radiant that's going to operate, let's say, between 68 and 122, or a high temperature system, and then your operating range is 86 to 179. You're going to set a maximum temperature based on the type of system you have, and a minimum temperature as well. Again, just a whole list of settings here. Your domestic set point, your type of domestic. In other words, do you have no domestic at all? Is it central heating only? Is it are you doing storage with a tank sensor or storage with an aquastat? The boiler needs to know that, so it's anticipating getting the correct signal. Anyway, as I said, we've had sessions on setting these up, and we'll be happy to answer questions. But I don't want to sort of dive too deep into that.
Yeah, and the other thing is when you start setting this up, it'll walk you through each one step by step.
So again, just a little larger picture. We did talk about this, but your Cascade connection is going to the bus terminal. That's that orange terminal on the left. And however many boilers you have, we'll have a bus plug. You will have a bus plug and just connect in series from boiler to boiler to boiler. But you do have to remember to respect polarity. And then the other thing I mentioned, well, I mean, you can use an outdoor sensor or you can use internet weather. If you're using indirect, you want to have either a sensor or an aquastat tying back to the tank connection. And in any cascade, it's essential that you have a system sensor connected to the load piping. Not any of the individual boiler piping, but we want to see what the common system is providing. And so a system sensor is essential in a cascade. And then
Ted, to go back to this connector question, and Steve, he is watching. Good. Hopefully everybody's feeling good. But Steve said he thought that in the original older kit there was white ones in there. So Mike may be right. There may be older kits that have white ones in there, which is kind of weird. But
have white what?
Connectors. Steve said they're older. Yeah, white ones and orange ones. So that's kind of weird. I don't remember. I always see orange.
Yeah, I don't remember white ones. Maybe Milik's older than I am. I don't know.
His kid's older.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so be it. I have no reason to doubt Milik. I haven't seen it. So anyway, that's that. Remember with any of these that when you first get them, there's going to be a jumper on TT1 that you want to take out.
Don't leave it in for 3 days.
If you leave it in, the boiler gets a constant heat demand, and people wonder why it never shuts off. Well, there's your answer. So whether you're doing a cascade, whether you're doing a single boiler, if you get anyone with this control, this type of control, make sure you pull that jumper out. All right. So just sort of a recap of what all these various setting or plugs are. There's the bus connection is your network. TT2 is for a separate room thermostat, and actually can be programmed to have a completely different profile. So if a demand goes to TT2, its profile can be completely different than what goes to TT1. And the outdoor sensor, I think, is probably self-explanatory. Tank, just to reiterate, it's either a sensor or an aquastat. The default is going to be sensor because that's what we prefer. But if you're using this with somebody else's tank or into a retrofitting a system with an aquastat, that's not a problem. You just have to tell the boiler what it's looking for. System sensor, and again, to reiterate, you can see installed on the supply line of the secondary loop. If you put it in the cascade side, the boiler is going to always operate in the emergency mode. Or if you don't install one, it'll operate because it needs that feedback. Otherwise, it doesn't know what it's trying to mix to. And then TT1 is your primary thermostat or demand signal. On the following follower boilers, the bus connection, again, just in series. Remember to disconnect your Wi-Fi and do not connect other sensors or heat demands, with the exception of that one particular case where you have a single boiler supplying the indirect tank, in which case you would connect your tank, either sensor or aquastat, back to that particular boiler, even though it's a follower. And what'll happen is when it gets a demand, it'll peel itself off the cascade to satisfy the domestic demand.
It's gotten a lot easier over the years, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, God, I remember first, you had to get somebody's external control, whether it was,
You had to use a tech bar or something.
yeah, exactly. And
But
God
there's
bless Techmar. I mean, they made a lot of beautiful controls, but I got to tell you, I had about 10 feet of wall space devoted to Techmar manuals because they were constantly changing and adding and modifying and consequently, I still got a bunch of old Techmark parts out there too that no longer kind of match anything I was doing. But now it's like Jason says, it's just gotten that much easier because all this cascading is now literally built into the boiler. So these boilers are the ones that have the solar control. What we're looking at now, the Honeywell solar control, which was designed in conjunction with us, and we're its primary user, although you will see it on some other commercial equipment. But on the left here is a manual. Again, this is all available online. There's a manual specific to the solar control for those people that really want to do a deep dive into it. And that's available on our website. And then these three others that I've just taken the kind of header off of. There's a particular manual for the FTG, for the LX, and for the TFT. And I'm not sure that I'm necessarily even showing you. You notice they're all dated. You'll see a version number. So for sure, if you go online, you're going to get the latest version of whatever these manuals are. And the individual manual dives probably deep enough for 90 or 95% of the applications you're going to run into when you're cascading. But if you really want to get a deep dive into the solar, there's that specific manual as well.
And that's kind of an easy control to setup anyways.
It's so easy that it honestly probably you're never going to need that.
It walks you right through it, just like our new the new setup wizard.
So to cascade the solar control, as you look at this, this is the this is the top wiring block in the box. As you look at it, there are essentially three wiring blocks. There's a low voltage block, a line voltage block, and a sensor block. Here you're looking at the communication and sensor block. If you're going to cascade, you want the three terminals all the way on the left, data plus, data minus, and data com. And you simply run 18.3 thermostat wire in series from boiler to boiler to boiler. Again, you want to respect polarity, and that's all there is to it as far as the wiring is concerned. So very, very simple. In fact, in some respects, it's even simpler than what we just looked at because you don't even need a plug. You're just going directly to it. You're going directly.
You don't have to disconnect the Wi-Fi board.
There's no Wi-Fi board to disconnect, although there will be
in the future.
Right now, we're looking at the current generation of TFT, LX, and FTG. As we roll into the future, and you see, for instance, the TFTN coming out, there will be Wi-Fi on board. Ultimately, there's going to be Wi-Fi on board everything, but we're phasing it in. Let's put it that way. So here would be three TFTs cascaded. You'll notice the lead or master boiler is the one all the way on the left. That controls not only its own pump, but the pump for the indirect. That's the A terminal when you're wiring them up. And then the system pump is coming off the C terminal. Again, when you're wiring, and then each of the other boilers simply controls their own individual pump and gets that data plus, minus, and com connection. Other than that, there's nothing else connecting to the follower boilers. So, and again, this is all in the manual, but just to kind of go through it, you can do as many as 8 boilers, as I mentioned. Each boiler will control its own circulator, which when you're wiring it is pump B. The communication wiring is 18.3 thermostat, and it's data plus, data minus, and data com, all in parallel. This says a system sensor is optional. I'm just not comfortable with that, quite honestly.
No.
I think in a cascade, it's important to know what the cascade is doing in the main loop, in the heating loop, and so I would definitely wire that back to the master boiler. The outdoor sensor is optional. If you want to reset, you've got to use the outdoor sensor, and that actually could go to any boiler in the cascade. And there's only one outdoor sensor, as same thing with system sensor, one sensor back to the cascade. Now, note that the system sensor needs to go to the master boiler. The outdoor sensor could go to any of them. They all need a unique Modbus address. The native language in this SOLA control is Modbus. That's how they communicate with each other. And the default, they're all set to 1, MB1 out of the factory. So you have to go in to the system identification and access menu and give each one a unique address. It doesn't have to be 123, it could be 135, it could be 167, but if you've got 3 boilers, they need 3 different numbers. And,
It should be 1, 2, 3, but sometimes 2 doesn't always work. Remember that job, Ted?
yeah, I had a job in Vermont. It was a real head scratcher. For whatever reason, the master boiler did not like Modbus 2. I don't know what it was, but as soon as we changed that second boiler from, I forget what I changed it to, 2 to 3 or 5 or something, I gave it just another number and it started working beautifully.
Well, one of Corey's guys, Corey called the other day, and I remember that situation you ran into. Threw it out to Corey, and the guy, his technician tried it. It worked perfectly.
Yeah, I don't understand it. Nobody's ever been able to explain it to me, but hey, it worked. You have to choose one and only one boiler in the Cascade to be the master. That's going to get all the control wiring, with the exception of maybe the outdoor sensor. And you want to go into the SOLA and into the settings, and you're going to enable master for this particular boiler, and you're going to tell the rest of them that they are um, lag boilers or followers. We used to call them masters and slaves, but I guess that's not PC anymore.
That's not good, man.
Even though we're talking about inanimate objects. So go figure.
You're technically right, but
Yeah. Anyway, here's another place where I find people actually inadvertently choking themselves. They don't put the proper size piping. And so you can only get so many BTUs at a flow rate through a particular size pipe. So this chart is it's in the manual. It's in all of those manuals actually, and this just is real handy for what size boiler you're using and what size pipe needs to be used if you're connecting however many boilers. So let's say you're cascading, I don't know, TFT 201s, and you've got 2 of them. Well, you need 2-inch pipe, and if you've got 6 of them, you need 4-inch pipe. And so by definition, if you're not doing that, if you're doing something smaller, you're not going to get the proper flow or BTU output.
you don't run half-inch.
Well, it's weird. I see all too often, I see like 150,000 BTU boiler. And again, maybe not in a Cascade, but see 150,000 BTU boiler pipe with 3/4 inch. And then people are wondering why it doesn't seem to eat as well as it should. It's it's not rocket science. It's flow. All right. Anyway, so you're going to the other trick on this is that there's on when you're wiring a solar control, there's LL1 and LL2. You want to do all heat demands in a cascade to number 2. If you number 1 is for single boilers only. So that's the other trick. CH2 needs to get the demand, the heat demand, right? That goes back to the master boiler. We have you're setting your central heat set point. Again, all on the lead boiler. Your outdoor reset settings, regardless of where the sensor goes, by the way, all of those settings go on the master boiler. And then your central heat pump, that's pump C, comes off the master boiler, and that is for your load circulator, not your boiler circulator. So the designations for the 3 designations for pump in that solar control, there's pump A, pump B, pump C. Think of it this way: A is aqua, that's your domestic water pump, your indirect. There's B is boiler, that's your boiler pump, that's the one that feeds the boiler itself. And then C is your central heat pump. So that's kind of just a mnemonic device for remembering which pump is which. And there you go. And that's your pump wiring. I got to just to reiterate what Jason said, particularly on the solar control, setting up a lead a cascade system is very, very easy.
Yeah, it's
All right.
probably one of the easiest boilers out there, the easiest controls out there to set up.
Absolutely. It's
And
just
wait till they see the new control. Holy moly, poly.
yeah, the new ones
That new
is
one's easy.
pretty
Whoa.
darn easy as well. Pretty
Oh
darn
yeah.
easy as well. But I would say that 99.9% of the people out there haven't seen it yet. So right now it's like a lot of hand waving.
Wait.
Hurry up and wait. Yeah.
Yep. Just wait. It'll be out there.
So anyway, for your domestic water setup, you want to connect your tank either. No, here you go. Here's a little trick too. You cannot use a tank sensor in a cascaded solar system. You must use an aquastat. And why that is, I can't tell you, but I can tell you that it's true. So you must use a tank thermostat or an aquastat. And that goes back to your sensor comm and DHW terminals. Your DHW set point is done on the lead lag master configuration menu. Yeah. So you want to set your DHW to switch, not sensor. And that's about it. And then your pump. Then you're deciding if one boiler is gonna again, like we showed in those pictures with the first system. You could have a single boiler peeling off to do your DHW, or you could, in which case that pump would be controlled by the individual boiler, or you can have the entire cascade. I've got a system in Rochester, New York, where we've got 4 800s, and all 4 of them are in the cascade for heat, but only one of the 800s does the domestic water. Of course, it's heating a 500-gallon tank, but nobody's ever complained in a 64-unit apartment building, so I guess they're getting enough hot water.
If they weren't, you would know.
I certainly would know. Nobody's ever bashful
Real
about
it.
Nobody's bashful about complaining. And again, just to reiterate something I said, there's this notice at the bottom that in a cascade system, you cannot use a tank sensor. So in case you forget what I said or you didn't catch it, in the fine print up top, there's this notice here at the bottom. It's a little further in the book than what Steve got to in the last session when he was reading all the warnings and notices. So, oh, what happened? Oh, okay. Well, I guess that we did get to the end. But this does show up later, and I promise you, at some point, we'll read all the rest of the warnings to you, but not tonight. And really, so as far as cascading, that's really about it. I'm going to say thank you very much for attending.
Thanks for watching the video today. If you'd like to check out more videos, see the link below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for all the future updates. And also check us out on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram.